Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to take a look at Russia and AI.
Yeah.
You've given us some really interesting sources,
Yeah.
academic papers, articles, even some opinion pieces,
Mm.
all kind of focused on the same question.
Yeah.
Where does Russia fit into this global AI landscape?
Right.
Are they a sleeping giant or are they lagging behind?
Yeah.
What does that mean for everybody else?
It's a good question, and one that I think often gets overshadowed
Yeah.
by this sort of U.S.-China rivalry in AI.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
And to understand where Russia is today, we kind of have to go back in time a little bit
I agree.
because it turns out the Soviet Union had a surprisingly strong foundation
Hmm.
in AI research.
Yeah.
They were even rivaling the West during the Cold War.
Absolutely.
And a key figure in that story is this guy, Dmitry Pospelov.
Possible, yeah.
He was a mathematician who led AI research in the USSR.
He did.
But his approach was really different from what was happening in the West. So what made his approach so unique?
Well, so instead of focusing on that kind of linear step-by-step thinking,
Okay.
Pospelov was fascinated by this idea of
Yeah.
mapping knowledge in networks.
Okay.
He believed that that was closer to how the human mind works.
Interesting.
It was a very forward-thinking approach, especially for that era.
So he was trying to get computers to think more like humans
Yeah.
using networks instead of just following instructions.
right.
Yeah. And he had some pretty impressive achievements, too.
He did, yeah.
I mean, they created over 300 specialized AI systems
Wow.
under his leadership
Yeah.
for things like equipment maintenance, diagnostics, even decision support.
That's right.
They developed their own programming language
Yeah.
called REFL,
Reflux.
which was a direct rival to languages like ILSP and Prolog that were being used in the West.
That's right, yeah.
Wow, that's a lot more advanced than I would have guessed.
Yeah.
But then, of course, the Soviet Union collapses. What happened to all that expertise?
Well, unfortunately, I mean, the field of AI research in Russia kind of went into hibernation
Okay.
throughout the 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
The new government just didn't prioritize it.
Right.
Funding dried up.
Yeah.
A lot of talented researchers left the country.
Yeah.
There's a real loss of momentum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what were the lasting consequences of
Yeah.
that?
Mm.
Did they ever manage to recover?
They've certainly tried to jump
Yeah.
back into the game.
Okay.
Russia adopted its national AI strategy in 2019,
Okay.
and the goal was pretty ambitious
Okay.
to become a top 5 player globally.
It seems like a pretty steep climb after all that lost time.
It is.
What's their strategy for achieving that?
Well, it's a very state-centric approach.
okay.
The government is playing a huge role
Yeah.
in funding and control.
Okay, so that's very different from the U.S. then,
Very different from the U.S.
where it's these private companies like Google and Microsoft
Yeah.
that are driving AI innovation. So essentially two very different paths
Totally.
to AI dominance. Do you think Russia's top-down approach could be an advantage in some ways?
It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
There are definitely arguments to be made on both sides.
Okay.
I mean, a centralized approach can allow for that rapid mobilization of resources
Mm-hmm.
and focused investment in strategic areas.
Right.
On the other hand, it could stifle innovation
Yeah.
and limit that kind of flexibility that you see
Right.
with a more market-driven approach.
Right. So speaking of strategic areas,
Yeah.
one thing that really jumped out at me from all these sources
Mm-hmm.
was Russia's focus on the militarization of AI.
Yeah.
They seem to see it as absolutely crucial to modernizing their military
Mm-hmm.
and compensating for their conventional inferiority to NATO.
Right. It's not just about catching up, though.
Right.
They're looking to leverage AI
Okay.
for what's called asymmetric advantage.
What's that?
So that means finding ways to gain an edge, even against a technologically superior opponent,
I see.
like NATO.
Okay. Can you give us some concrete examples of what that looks like?
Sure. So take the T-14 Armata tank, for example.
Okay.
It's designed to be unmanned
Wow.
and remotely operated,
Okay.
potentially reducing the risk to human soldiers
Right.
and increasing its effectiveness in these high-risk combat situations.
Makes sense.
And then you have the Su-57 fighter jet,
Yeah.
which is supposed to incorporate these advanced AI capabilities
Mm-hmm.
for enhanced situational awareness and decision-making in the air.
And then there are those automated combat modules
Yeah.
using neural networks that keep coming up.
Mhm.
It's all pretty cutting edge, but it also feels a bit unsettling. I mean,
Yeah.
what are the implications of this kind of technology for the future of warfare?
That's a question the whole world is grappling with.
Yeah.
I mean, we're potentially looking at a future
Hmm?
where autonomous weapons
Right.
are making these life or death decisions
Yeah.
on the battlefield
Yeah.
without human intervention.
Right.
And this raises a whole host of ethical
Hmm.
and strategic questions
Yeah.
that we haven't even begun to fully address.
It's pretty scary stuff.
It is. It's not just about, the hardware on the battlefield either.
Right.
It's about how AI can fundamentally change, like, the nature of conflict itself.
Yeah. One of the things that keeps coming up in these sources is the use of AI for disinformation campaigns.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just about spreading false information anymore. It's
Totally.
about creating these like hyper-realistic deep fakes
Yes.
that are almost impossible to distinguish from the real thing.
Exactly.
It's a whole new level of information warfare.
It is a whole new level.
And it feels like that could be even more destabilizing than traditional military force.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it just erodes trust in everything, in institutions, in the media,
Yeah.
in what we see with our own eyes.
Exactly. And the speed at which AI can generate and spread this disinformation is crazy.
It's wild.
It's unprecedented.
Yeah.
It's a real challenge for democracies.
Yeah.
And anyone trying to,
Yeah.
discern truth from falsehood.
Right. It really feels like we're entering this digital arms race
Yeah.
with countries scrambling to develop and deploy these AI-powered tools for both offense and defense.
There's definitely that sense, I think.
Yeah. But shifting gears a bit,
Sure.
these sources also highlight some of the challenges
Yeah.
Russia faces in this AI race.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest seems to be the brain drain.
The brain drain. Yeah. The loss
Yeah.
of skilled scientists and engineers
Yeah.
is a significant hurdle for Russia.
Yeah.
Many of their, top minds
Mm-hmm.
have been drawn to the West,
Yeah.
particularly Silicon Valley,
Right.
where the opportunities and resources
Yeah.
are much greater.
Right. And then on top of that, there's their dependence on foreign technology, especially when it comes to semiconductors.
Absolutely.
Russia's semiconductor industry
Mm.
is just not on par
Right.
with global leaders
Yeah.
like the US, Taiwan, South Korea,
Yeah. And that dependence makes them incredibly vulnerable.
especially with the current geopolitical climate.
Exactly.
It's like they're trying to build this cutting edge military,
Yeah.
but they're reliant on others for the essential building blocks.
It's a real dilemma.
Yeah, it's a tough spot.
It is.
But, it's not all doom and gloom for Russia.
Right.
I mean, these sources do point to some potential strengths as well.
They do.
What are some of those?
Well, one of the things Russia has going for it
Yeah,
is a strong mathematical and scientific education system.
which is obviously a critical foundation
It is.
for AI development.
Absolutely.
And then there's this interesting paradox
Yeah.
of their digital isolation.
Right.
That could be an advantage in some ways, right?
It could be.
How so?
Well, Russia's relative isolation
Mm-hmm.
has limited their access
Okay.
to the massive data sets
Yeah.
that fuel AI development in the West.
Right.
But it's also forced them
Yeah.
to create their own digital ecosystem.
So they have their own versions of like
Right.
Google and Facebook.
Yeah, Yandex and VK.
Right.
Exactly.
And those companies have access to a lot of data
They do.
that Western companies don't.
That's right. And it's data that's specifically tailored
Yeah.
to the Russian market
Right.
and the Russian context.
Right. So that could give them an advantage
It could.
in developing AI systems that are highly effective
Yeah.
within their own sphere of influence.
Absolutely. It's a double-edged sword.
It is, yeah.
They're cut off from the global exchange of ideas,
Right.
the benefits of open collaboration.
Right. But they also have this degree of control
Yeah.
and independence
Yeah.
that many other countries don't.
Exactly.
So it's fascinating to see how these different factors are all playing out.
Yeah.
And speaking of different factors, we can't ignore the elephant in the room.
Right.
China. These sources suggest that the Russia-China partnership
Yeah,
in AI is growing rapidly.
it is.
Why is that?
I mean, they have a number of shared interests,
Okay.
particularly when it comes to challenging U.S. dominance
Okay.
in technology.
Right.
And the pressure they're facing from the U.S.
Yeah.
is definitely pushing them closer together.
But it sounds like a complicated relationship.
It's a very complicated relationship.
In what way?
Well, Russia is understandably wary
Okay.
of becoming too dependent on China.
Right. It's like walking a tightrope.
It is.
You need their help,
Yeah,
but you don't want to fall under their control.
exactly.
What are some of the specific concerns there?
Well, one of the things that Russia is particularly concerned about
Mm-hmm.
is losing control of its data to China.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, data is the new oil.
It is.
And China has shown a willingness to use that data for social control and economic dominance.
Right. Russia doesn't want to become like a digital colony of Beijing. So you have these three superpowers.
Right.
The U.S., China, and Russia locked in this triangular struggle for AI supremacy.
That's the big picture.
And the stakes couldn't be higher. I mean, this isn't just about technological prowess.
No, it's about shaping the future global order.
Right. Influencing everything.
Everything.
From military power to economic dominance to even cultural values.
Absolutely.
It's about who gets to set the rules of the game in the 21st century. So where does Russia fit into all of this? Are they a true contender in this AI race? Or are they just trying to catch up? It's a tough question.
It is a tough question.
I mean, they have some undeniable strength, especially that scientific foundation and their willingness to kind of push the boundaries with military applications of AI. But then those weaknesses that we talked about.
Right.
The brain drain.
The brain drain.
Dependence on foreign technology. Those are some pretty significant hurdles to overcome.
It really does come down to whether they can leverage those strengths to overcome those limitations. Kind of a classic case of potential versus reality.
Right. And there's also the ethical dimension to consider.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know, these sources suggest that Russia is going full steam ahead with the militarization of AI, but they don't seem too concerned about the potential consequences.
Yeah, that's an important point. I mean, while there are these ongoing debates in the U.S. and Europe about responsible AI development and the ethical implications of autonomous weapons. Russia seems to be taking a much more pragmatic, some might even say ruthless approach.
So they're prioritizing power and control over these sort of broader ethical considerations.
It seems that way. At least based on the information that we have.
Right. So to bring it back to our original question then, where does Russia stand in this global AI landscape?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that this AI race is far from over.
Right.
It's not a simple two-horse race between the U.S. and China. Russia's a wild card.
A wild card. I like that. What do you mean by that?
Well, they have the potential to be a major player. But they also pose this potential source of instability. Their actions are often unpredictable, and their motivations aren't always transparent.
Right.
So it's hard to say where they'll end up.
It makes them a fascinating case study then.
It does.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you would want our listeners to take away from all of this?
I'd say keep an eye on Russia.
Okay.
They may not be the front runner in this AI race.
Right.
But they're definitely a force to be reckoned with. Their decisions and actions. In the realm of AI, are going to have significant implications for the future of global security and stability.
It's a reminder that the world is a complex and interconnected place.
It is.
And these powerful technologies like AI only amplify those complexities.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Russia's AI landscape.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful. And we encourage you to keep exploring this fascinating and rapidly evolving field.
Absolutely.